What's up? It's taken me a little bit of time to decide to make a video to do this, because I didn't want to. I don't really want to air this dirty laundry for the internet to hear, but I feel like I'm doing a disservice to honest people everywhere if I don't. So, do a little drive and talk, and we'll talk about this. Tell the story. All right. So, if you follow my social media or YouTube channel, whatever you follow, you know that I have two really cool black Cane Corsos. Franco is huge, and Alessa is small but just amazing. So, I have these dogs. I purchased both dogs from Dan at Wasatch Mountain Cane Corso, however you say it. So, the dogs are great. I have zero complaints, and I know that's what came up in 21. But the dogs are great, and I have zero complaints about my animals themselves. My complaint in the story today deals directly with Dan and the kennel. And like I said, this is a warning to people that are getting into buying dogs. And it's not just, I mean, it is applicable to Dan's kennel and all that, but it's not just applicable to Dan's kennel. It's applicable to all kennels. You know, if you're buying a dog from anyone, it shows that the contracts that some of these breeders are, you know, that they require, they're there for a reason. And it's not just for the consumer, it's also for the seller as well. It holds everybody accountable to the deal. It's like when you go buy a car, the contract's there, yep, they're horrible and everybody hates them and they're time consuming and all that. But at the end of the day, they're there for a reason. You know, they hold everybody accountable. They let everybody know very clearly what they are responsible for in this transaction. This situation very well could have been avoided, providing those existed. So, you know, and I can't say that I'm not 100% without fault, because I do business on occasion with certain people that are handshake deals. I believe the best in people, or try to. And there are people that I deal with that, you know, we can do business on a handshake. There's no contracts that are ever required. It may come back to bite me in the ass, but at the end of the day, it's been good so far. And I hope to be able to carry that on, because I would rather do business that way. I would like to believe that people are good, and I would like to only deal with good people. So, all right, so let's get into the story. So, I bought Alessa, and it was smooth sailing. The deal was super, super smooth, and so I was obviously a fan of Dan and his kennel, what he's doing, all the big fan. So, as business goes these days, you know, you can make a customer for life based on the interaction. So I got some stuff jiggling here. I can hear it through my earbuds. But you can make a customer for life that will literally do all the advertising you ever could want if you take care of them. Excuse me. So that's what happened. You know, I supported Dan, and I pushed his kennel to everybody that I knew when it came to Cane Corsos, because I had a great transaction with him. You know, the dealings were awesome, and I had no reason not to. He took care of me on Alessa, and I just assumed that's how he did business. So, I've got a buddy that I know from the gym, and I know him outside of the gym too, but he, you know, he's not in the internet world. He doesn't do social media. He has chose to live a more private life, which is great. That's ultimately what I'm trying to do as well. But I have to be on social media to some degree with my profession. So, you know, he doesn't know about Dan. He doesn't know about the kennel. He doesn't know who the good kennels are. He doesn't know any of that. He doesn't even know where to go. He just Googles kennels and finds one or two, and that's it. So he asked me for some help. He said, you know, my dog had passed away a while ago. We're ready to get a dog. I really want a Connie Corso after meeting Alessa, and it's time for us to get a dog, so help me find a black brindle. Cool. He's like, I want a male and I want a big one. Cool. Sounds good. Let's get it done. So I reach out to Dan. At the time, Dan didn't have anything. He follows up with me days or a week or so later, saying that he's got one, and he also has the dog that I was after too, because when I bought Alessa, I just fell in love with Alessa, and I said, if you end up with a big black male that would be, complement her well, I would love to have one. So just put me on the list for one. Whenever it happens, just let me know. Get you paid. So he says, I've got your dog too. And I'm like, well, kind of a bad time, but when is it a good time? It's been 3 years. So I assume that it's going to be years until I can find another one, so let's just make it happen. So my buddy reaches out to Dan. They have their conversation. They talk about the terms and the deal and all that, because there's some issues with the dogs. And what had happened, from my understanding, and I don't know how this all goes, I know everybody's kind of friends on that end, so the story goes that Dan bought these dogs from Daryl Brown, who they were going to be part of his breeding program, but the male's balls hadn't dropped. That their balls hadn't dropped, and so they would be unable to be part of the breeding program. So they were of no use to Dan. So we got them obviously at a dramatically reduced rate because they were unable to be bred. They are just, we didn't really care. We wanted them as pets. If they could breed, great. If not, great. It wasn't our top concern. We were looking for a family dog, and I was looking for companionship for Alessa. Alessa was fixed, and so that was it. So anyways, we worked a deal. My buddy Venmos Dan, I Venmo Dan, and they had set it up. We're going to go out the next day. So we load up the car 4 o'clock in the morning, the truck, and we shoot out to Salt Lake City, Utah. So while we're at the kennel, we're talking to Dan, and Dan says that, if these dogs are going to be spectacular, they're going to be huge, I should expect 180 pounds out of them. They're 10 weeks and 34 and 35 pounds. So, they are big dogs. And so he says, these are going to be spectacular, and by chance, if their balls ever drop, I will pay you more for a straw semen than you guys paid for the dogs. And we're like, cool, hoping the dog's balls drop. We just hope they drop anyways, right? So there's no contract signed, and that's about the extent of how that conversation went. There's no obligations to give him semen. There's no breeding rights. There's no nothing. We went in under the assumption that because we are purchasing these dogs, there are 0 contracts, there was never any discussion of co-ownership, any of that. We own these dogs. We gave them money for goods, period. End of transaction. Had I known that it was a co-ownership deal, it would have been a lot bigger conversation. It would have been a whole lot more of an issue. And whether I would have bought the dog or not, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have. But at that point, it probably would have been debatable. So so we have this. There's no obligations. There's no verbal agreements that we have to provide anything. It is what it is. If the dog's balls drop, he's going to buy semen for more than we paid for dogs. We're there for less than a half hour. We got the 50-cent tour. My buddy had never seen the kennel. I wanted to see the dogs. It was great. So we leave. They take our pictures, and we're out. Dan was going to send off our AKC documents for us. Great, because we don't know. I'm not in the breeding world. I have a cool dog, and that's about the extent of it. I don't know how it all works. I don't know anything else, and I assume I just bought a dog, and so if he's going to send that out, then that's less work for me. So cool. So we get our thank you cards. We get my buddy gets one, I get one. We get a thank you card. Thank you for your business, Dan, Wasatch, County, Corso, whatever card. And we get our AKC documents at some point too. And I reach out to my buddy and I'm like, hey, is Dan on yours as an owner? He says, yeah. I said, Dan's on mine as an owner as well. And he says, that was nothing we talked about. He says, I'm kind of mad about that. I said, me too. I said, I don't want to co-own a dog. It's not something I'm signing up for. I said, so what the hell? He says, yeah. He says, there was none of that. I said, did you sign anything? He says, no. He said, I didn't have any contract. He said, I didn't either. So, and we had been together the whole time, and I'm like, maybe I missed something. Like, I don't know. But clearly I didn't, because he didn't have a contract. I don't have a contract, so clearly we didn't miss anything. We were both on the same page. So, we're kind of mad about this. Well, I didn't think anything of it, and I started asking questions, but I didn't think Dan was out to screw me. I just was like, I don't understand this. Well, he says, had you bought breeding rights, da-da-da-da-da, and I'm like, well, we didn't talk about this part. Like, it is safe to assume that it is 100% ownership, because where you're not putting in contract otherwise. I'm buying a dog. I'm exchanging money for goods. And he said, well, this is how it goes, and I'm just not happy with that answer, but I just let it die. At this point, Dan and I have been friends for a couple of years after this whole thing with Alessa, and I'm just trying to figure out a way that we can have this conversation without ruining them, and just keep everybody happy. So, Franco grows, and my buddy's dog grows up to be they're beautiful dogs, and 200 plus pound corsos, YouTube doesn't believe they exist. So you can understand how hot of a commodity that must be for a breeder that wants that in his program. So anyways, we start wondering, and about, I guess maybe a couple months after we'd got home, we'd got our mite. Both dogs had mites, so we got that taken care of. And after that, their balls dropped, both of them. So we're wondering, okay, now are they fertile? Like, the balls were up and they didn't drop, they dropped late. Are they able to be bred? And so Dan suggested that I go to a breeding specialist on his dollar to go have the dog collected and find out if he is fertile, right? So I take him. It's hours away. I was northwest Colorado. I didn't even know where the hell I was. It was in the middle of nowhere. I get him all taken care of. I pay for it right there. Dan's going to reimburse me, which he never does, still to this day. And it's come up a couple times since then. So I never get reimbursed. And we get him collected, and sure enough, Franco's fertile. He can conceive conventionally or with artificial insemination. We can do artificial insemination with him or conventionally, they determine. So then, obviously there's some interest in potentially breeding him. And, at this point, he's just over 200 pounds, and he looks good. He's, and so we're talking about, okay, we're going to put this in the to-do list. I randomly get a text from Dan that's like, hey, I'm 30 minutes from your house. Are you home by any chance? I said, well, actually I am. I work from home today. He says, well, I'd love to come and check out the dogs. And I said, all right, cool. So he stops by. The video's on my YouTube if you go back in there of their interaction and how that all went. His jaw was on the floor. He just couldn't believe that this dog existed. So super excited about the dog. He's like, all right, we need to breed this dog. Okay. So we get to talking and trying to figure out how to make it happen. And I can't break away to go to Utah, and I don't have time to do that. And so he offers to just handle everything. Great. He's going to drive out, grab Franco, drive back, breed him, drive him back, and be good. So the elephant in the room is the money, right? The money is always the sore subject in some of these transactions. And based on our conversations about the signing, I had a feeling it was going to be kind of a rough topic anyways, but we had to address it. So while Dan's out to pick up the dog, I said, all right, so what is the compensation for this? Obviously when we were there, you said you would pay more money than we did for the dogs, for semen. So what is this gonna pay out to me? And he says, well, I had my expenses and this, and I'm getting the dog, and I'm doing this, I'm driving back and forth, and all of these things, and I'm like, okay, I can see where this is going. That this is not going to be something I get anything out of. He's hoping that I don't. He's hoping to walk away from this without anything. And so I'm like, all right, well, let's try something else. You're a friend of mine. I don't want to stir anything up. So you train dogs. You're going to have him. I just need some training done. I said, the girl that I'm dating is very small. She's very petite, and she has a 4-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. I said, a 200-pound dog is pretty dangerous to these people. And so he gets really excited. He thinks he's just this tiny little puppy, so he's really intrusive. And obviously, I don't want anybody to get hurt. So while you have him, this is what I'd like to be trained out of him. I'd like him to be calm. I'd like to have him sit and be in a place, and I just am not capable of making it happen so far. So we agree that's the deal. I'm going to get training. He's going to get one breeding, and we're good. So we get pictures and video of him doing these different training things. None of them fit what I was hoping for, but I'm excited that he's doing all of it, right? And so when it comes time for the dog to come back, he says, I just want to let you know, this is probably the morning of or the night before, he says, I want you to know that while he was out here, he developed some hot spots on his neck. So parts of his neck is shaved, and I just don't want you to be shocked. But just letting you know that happened. I had him to the vet. I've got some ointment for you to take care of him, and it'll grow back, right? And I'm thinking, God, okay. So he's telling me when he gets back, he says, I changed the way he ate. I cut him way back on food, and we did this day of fasting, and all this stuff. We would fast once a week, and I'm like, okay, the dog is visually shook. He comes home, and he just looks down. So he sees Alessa, he's super excited, they're out playing in the yard, we're going over all the stuff that he did. So, back up real quick, before he came out, and they were doing the collecting of Franco, I did forget that there was a time, so he called me and said that he couldn't collect as much as he wanted. There was an issue with storage of him or something like that, and he couldn't get as much out of him as he wanted. And we had agreed on one breeding, and I'm like, in my head I'm thinking, well, I didn't know this is how this was going to go. So obviously that's kind of karma, right? You try and get more for nothing, and you can't. So haha, and I'm thinking in my head okay, well, at least that's it. Let's get the dog back. I'm over this. So the dog comes back. He's got the neck shaved, all that. Him and Alessa are inseparable. Franco is clung to me, just visually shook, and has separation anxiety now. Every time I would walk out of a room, if I was gone for a second, I'd go to the bathroom, and I'm going in there to pee. If it was quick, I'd come out and he would have the trim in his mouth, and he'd be starting to tear the trim off the door. If I was in there to take a shower or any length of time, I'd come out, and 4 feet up the wall, down, the trim would be gone. You got to remember, this dog is 200 pounds, super strong, ripping trim off of the walls, and just trashing the house every time I'd leave. It's taken years, and actually, it's still not all the way broken. We still have some issues. I think I'm at a point where I can start putting some trim back in the house, but it's been an issue. Okay, so when he comes back, he says, all right, man, he says, I'm really glad that you did this. And when I was out there, I had told him, when he had said about the payment, I said, I'm a believer in your kennel. You'll be the first person to know if the semen is happens, if it's breedable. If his balls drop, you'll be the first person I go to. I want to see the dog done right. I want to see his lineage live on, and I want to see him, reproduced in a proper way. And so that was what I had said. There was never any obligation to do so, but it was me being loyal to his kennel and all that. Well, and I've told him all along the way that, he's the guy I'm going to go to. He's my go-to. And if you guys follow me, I have been a very firm believer in his kennel up until a couple of years ago. And I started following other kennels and started looking at other people. I've talked to a bunch of other breeders, and I have veered away, and I haven't vocalized so much as to why until 2021, and that got deleted. So anyways, the breeding, we get Franco back. I got some issues with him, but we're good. We're done. And Dan is pretty much not anywhere to be found. I have very little communication. He's going on to breed the dogs. He breeds the dog and has 12 puppies. I obviously get nothing out of that, and it wasn't our agreement to get anything out of it, but I mean, the dog is still awful when he meets people at the house. He gets so excited, and that has taken a long time to break because I'm not a dog trainer. I don't know. But anyways, okay, so he's back. The breeding goes on, everything else. Well, he is Dan is trying to get me to get him in touch with my buddy. And at one point they had talked on the phone, but now my buddy has watched all this go on. He's seen the name go on the AKC without our consent and with it not being in our contract. He saw how the breeding deal went with Franco, and he is not interested in dealing. And I asked him, because I asked everybody, can I give out your number? And he said he doesn't want me to pass on his information. But every time Dan is asked for his number, I do reach out and I say, hey, is it okay if I give Dan your number? And he says, I'd rather not, or no, please, I'm not interested. He has my information. He can contact me. And so what I do is I go back and I say, Dan, I can't give out his number, but I will pass on your information so he can reach out if he desires. Is that okay with you? Yep. Okay, so send it on. And so everything's kind of quiet. The litter is born, 12 beautiful puppies, and it's all over social media. And during this time, there's another litter born or something. And one of the guys, there's a guy from Colorado that bought a dog, and he drove out, got the dog, and then came back. And he's part of the automotive community as well. So we have a lot in common. We have dogs in common, and he really was hoping for one of the Franco puppies, but he got a different one. And he was having some issues with the dog, and he was kind of uppity about Dan. And he vocalized all his issues, and this dog is having problems. The dog's is having seizures, and so he's going back and forth with Dan about it. And then during this, he's friends with another guy that's friends with Dan who buys a lot of dogs, and he shares some photos of this last dog that he has got, and it's in poor health. Really just awful. It was very sad to see. So that guy reaches out to me, and we're talking, and he seems like a pretty straight up dude, and he seems real, just all these people that I'm dealing with seem, just really pretty normal people. They don't seem like there's an ulterior motive. They just want what they paid for. And I'm like, what is going on? These dogs aren't healthy, all this stuff. And all of the Franco puppies, from my understanding, have been healthy. And a couple people had followed me. I deleted as many of those as I could. I'm just trying to cut my ties from this kennel, and you'll understand why at the end of this. But anyways, some of those people had followed me, and all those dogs look great, but I don't know the details. I don't know if there's anything else, because the stuff kind of gets pushed aside or gets washed out, and I'm not super active on the internet. I actually, if I have friends on Facebook, I don't follow anyone, so I don't know what's going on. I just use it for Marketplace. But anyways, so this big post gets posted. After I get back from Arizona, I was going to meet the guy that was in Arizona. Our schedules didn't align, but I get back, and I'm getting tagged in this post, and everybody's just laying into Dan. And I've been quiet about my dealings with him at this point. And I decide I'm just over it. And I don't like seeing these people mistreated. I don't like what happened to me. And so I jump in. And I'd say, there was never a contract that said that he was going to be on our dogs. He put himself on our dogs. They weren't even his breeding. It was Daryl Brown's litter. And he's filled out our AKC, so we didn't have a choice. but there's no contracts, no anything with us, and whatever. I gave him this, and he brought the dog back in horrible condition, and I'd never do it again. So this post gets made, and of course he reaches out. This would be like November 19th or 20th, maybe the 21st of November of 21. So he reaches out. He's like, man, I didn't know you were so upset, and I didn't know if there was problems. And I'm like, yeah, we talked about these problems, and we've talked about these a couple times, but I really haven't let on to how upset I am about it, because I'm just trying to like work through this and just kind of chip away and like, let's figure out a way to make this work. Like, I don't want to, I didn't want to like just have you completely tell me to fuck off, and I don't have the opportunity to fix this, so I need to figure out a way to work with you on this, right? So anyways, he says, I'll tell you what, he says, you delete the comments, and, we'll take care of it. We'll get it all taken care of. There's no need to have any of this. He's like, there's no need to have bad blood. I don't want to, I don't need you to feel that way. I want you taken care of. I'm a good guy, all this stuff. So he agrees he's going to sign off on my dog and my buddy's dog. And he says, all right, I'm going to reach out to the AKC, find out what we need to do to get signed off, and I'll get it taken care of. Don't worry about any money. I don't want to burn you. I don't want you to feel like you got a bad deal, so I'll take care of it. Next day, he leaves it all on my voicemail on how to do it, but we end up talking, and I'm like, all right, cool. My buddy is on holiday, so he is not around. He's busy at work, so I'm going to gather up his paperwork. I'll gather up mine, and we'll send it out as soon as I can, but I don't know when I'm going to get to it. And he says, all right, cool, no big deal. I'm good for it. I'll take care of it whenever it comes up. And I kind of believed that. So I didn't really make it a rush deal. And my buddy, he's busy. I don't see him as much anymore. Everybody's flashing their lights here. But anyways, so let's fast forward. I delete my I deleted on my comments. So after that, we'll fast forward here, and this will be last Wednesday. So January 11th, 2023. I text him because I've been in touch with other breeders, and obviously when we had that conversation back then, I had let him know my intentions was I'm going to breed him at least once in order to fund the gastropexy and neutering of Franco, because those are things that I want to do. And I said I might breed him once with me and do something with me, maybe with another kennel. We'll see. I don't really know, but I'm not going to be tied to this. And he was fine with it. He says, you don't even need my signature to breed that dog. So now in 23, I reach out and I said, hey, do you have health scores from Franco's parents? And he had Franco tested as far as I remember while I was out there, and he says, no, I do not. Why? And I said, talking to my vet about potentially breeding Franco, and I just want to look at this and see if there's any underlying issues we need to be concerned about. I want quality animals, and I don't want to breed them if it's not going to be a good breeding. It's not what I need. I don't want to produce crappy dogs. I don't want dogs that have to be put down. I want to do this the best I possibly can. Especially it's my first breeding, so I want to make sure that everything is spot on. And I said, so I just want them to review it. And he writes me back and he says, Franco is not available for breeding. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes on, he's like, well, did you send that paperwork to me to sign? Your buddy hasn't provided any semen, we have this verbal contract. And I'm like, I don't care what you guys have now. And as far as I'm understanding, they don't have anything, because that's what my buddy has told me. They haven't talked since we picked up the dogs. And so so I was like, whatever you guys have going on that's separate than mine. Conversation goes back and forth for, a while, and then he finally says, I'll tell you what, I will sign off on Franco, but I'm not touching Titan. Not until your buddy fulfills our agreement. And I'm like, whatever, just fucking sign off on my dog. So I said, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to overnight you a envelope with the AKC documents in for you to sign off on. And I'm going to overnight it to you, and I'm going to put an envelope in there for you to send it back so you don't have any cost. There's absolutely no reason why you cannot make this happen. You get it, pull it out, sign it, put it in the other envelope, and drop it at FedEx, and you're done. You can drop it at Office Store or whatever that has a FedEx in it, and I think they have them in some grocery stores even now. So it is super easy for you to fulfill your agreement with me. And he says, okay. Tell them they sent the next day, don't hear anything back. So on Friday the 13th, I figure, I checked the tracking as I'm parking at the gym. He's received the paperwork at like 11:16 a.m. All right, it's like 11:30, maybe. I go in, I get changed, I'm training about halfway through my workout, and I get a text from Dan. It says, hey, I received your paperwork, and I'm really sorry that I have to do this, but, and the message goes on to say, basically, I'm not doing anything, and I'm not going to do what I said I was going to do until your buddy gives me semen. Dog semen. Until he gives me Titan semen. Until he has them collected. I'll pay for everything, blah, 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 whatever. So now he's holding my AKC documents hostage for what he says is a verbal agreement that happened when we were there. And I'm a witness to that transaction that there are no verbal agreements, period. Nothing about co-ownership. Nothing about any of that. And he keeps falling on this I'm a co-owner thing, and so I'm guessing that's why he put us on, or put himself on our ownership paperwork. So anyways, him and I have been fighting about it. He says if he doesn't hear from my buddy by yesterday, he's gonna, his lawyer's gonna send papers, whatever, big threats. I'm gonna sue. So and this was Friday in that argument, he had talked about that. And I said, well, what's your legal representation's information? No response. So Sunday, I sent him a text. Been in touch with my buddy. I said, hey, Dan, I talked to my buddy, and he is 100% willing to have Titan collected. He is. But he is unwilling to discuss the terms of that until our dealings have been handled reasonable. And he is. This is 100% truthful. He will, but he has no contract saying he's required to do any of this, so there needs to be a discussion of the terms. He has no problem selling semen to Dan because he's not required to give it to him. He has no problem having him collected, but he wants to know before he goes through this process what the terms are. What does all this look like? And so I told him, I said, if I don't see those documents signed out on Monday, and I will say I gave him Monday leeway because it was Martin Luther King Day and I didn't know. I don't get holidays like that. So anyways, so I'm like, if I don't see this tracking information sent to me, then I'm going to close the window of communication after that. And he said, and so he didn't respond to that yesterday. Yesterday, Monday, he said that he talked to his attorney, and his attorney says I'm not connected to this in any way. And I was like, well, yeah, no shit. So send my documents, and get me taken care of. I'm not a party of this. All this stuff has nothing to do with whatever you're going after my buddy for. Sue him, whatever you want to do. But none of this, you have a written agreement now in text that says you're going to do these things. And you are going back on that transaction, and now you're verbally going against it. We had a verbal contract in 21. We have a written contract through text now, and you're going against both of those. And I'm not even pointing out that you said you were going to do both dogs in 21. I'm just saying, just take care of signing off on my dog. And so I've been dealing with this guy for almost 7 years now. And the moral of this story is, because I'm not getting my paperwork because that's his control of the situation. The moral of the story is these contracts that breeders put out, they're there not only for you as the consumer, but also for them. It holds every party accountable to the transaction. So there should have been a contract signed that said that Dan was going to sign on as a co-owner, but there wasn't. And he didn't. He did sign on as a co-owner, but it is implied, because there isn't one, that there is 100% purchase, that I'm 100% owner in the purchase, because it isn't outlined that that's different. And whether that's what common practice is or not, I'm still purchasing goods in exchange for dollars. I'm giving him dollars in exchange for goods, and that's all that there is to it. There's no terms and conditions to that transaction. I own him because I paid for him. Had there been a contract that says I get one breeding, he'd hold my buddy to that. But there isn't one. So now there's this like gray area where you can have all your time sucked and all your energy redirected to dealing with this bullshit because there's no contract. And I'll tell you, at the end of the day, I'm not worried about any of this. I mean, he can have that piece of paper. It's now torn off. He's just got the bottom slip. I have the top. But the AKC is sending me those documents again. And the AKC told me flat out, I don't need him to sign off on anything to breed the dog. I'm an owner. I own the dog. It's a breeder. They told me I was right in assuming that I own 100% of that dog based on the transaction that went down. And so I can go on, I can freely breed him, I can do whatever. I could sell 100 straws a year if I wanted. And there's nothing legally tying me to that unless I have a contract that says I'm going to give him any amount of those straws. So so I'm not worried about anything. I don't even need to get into all the details, all these things. But the warning is this, right? So I'm a novice. I mean, to any degree, I'm a novice in this dog purchasing and, all this. So I get worried immediately, right? So Friday when I got that text, it ruined my workout. I go to the gym to clear my head. I go to the gym, to just break away from all the stress, and it helps me relax. And so it ruined my workout. It ruined my peace for that day. That night, it was lingering, and I was pissed, and I got worked up, and I was angry, and it was in my head. I haven't slept well for days because of this. Sorry, we got third world country roads out here. So anyways, I'm pissed, I'm worked up, this is on my mind. I'm texting back and forth and having this text pissing match, and he's calling me names, and I'm trying to be professional, I'm trying not to be pissed off, and it gets you, and it just sucks your energy and your time and your focus. And there's no reason for it. It could easily be avoided, right? The contract could have been signed. Each party knows. Without a contract, we all know. But then it's whatever he wants to say was whatever, and he can fight that, right? I could say, the dog was supposed to have unicorn wings and a horn and be pink and purple, but it didn't do that. I'm suing you. And potentially, even though that has absolutely zero legal standing, I could drag him into a courtroom and waste the time, and so he's able to potentially drag my buddy into a courtroom or drag me into a courtroom, and you know what? I 100% will go to bat for my buddy. So if he sues my buddy knows he can subpoena me, and I'm going to be straight up with him. And I'm going to go in and I will testify on his behalf because I was a witness to the contract. I was a witness to the purchase, and I was there 100% of the time, and I didn't leave his side. And so him having a contract could keep me from wasting time, because it is all a waste of time. There's nothing that's going to come out of any of this. It's going to be a pissing match, just like I told Dan in text. I mean, he called us children or whatever, but it's not important. The important thing is that he has wasted a bunch of time, and it was unnecessary had we done the contract. And now looking back, I should have requested one, we should have had it outlined, and we should have done that. And that's that. But I didn't. So this is my lesson that I'm going to give to the world, that you guys don't have to learn any other way but to listen to me and my experience with this. Now, 6+ years of doing business and friendship with a person is going to be ruined over something he feels entitled to. That's kind of annoying. And I'm glad sometimes people just weed themselves out of your life, and that's fine. And I can appreciate that. I have no complaints that, he's gone. I don't really care to do business with people that act this way anyways. But I don't want to see somebody else burned. Because if he's willing to do that to me after buying 2 dogs, referring countless amount of people, spamming and just gassing him up on social media every opportunity I get every time I post that dog. I've been, when I was doing social media, I was arguing with people. There's a guy posting, he's got the world's biggest corso. He's 180 pounds. Franco was 218 5 months ago or 4 months ago. I have it all from the vet notes. 99 kicks. So it's not and I went back and I would fight and I would gas him up even going against these people. It's a waste of fucking time. Waste of time and energy. I was worked up. I'll tell you, I've had some of the best workouts the last couple of days that I've had in a long time because I'm so pissed off. But I haven't been able to focus on anything. Friday, I was furious. I didn't know what was going on. I locked down my house. The dog's kennel was locked up. There was more lights on outside than ever have been, and we are ready for whatever. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was unsure of where he was going to go because I don't deal with this kind of stuff from people. And as much as I don't worry about a lot of things, I didn't need the headache and I didn't need the drama, but I need to protect my family, which is my dogs, right? And he got under my skin only because of the topic. I don't have kids. These are my kids. I'm a fur father, and that's it. And so you start messing with my family like that, and it gets me worked up, and you cannot shake it. But after lots of conversations with the AKC, lots of conversations with attorneys, I'm not as worried. There really is no grounds for any of it. And if I get drug into court, so be it. I want to see done right what needs to be done right. And I want to see this end. I want to see Franco and Titan signed off. And I just want to be done and detached from this kennel. So now you guys can see why I would start disowning the people that are tied to him. And I know that it's unfair to those people. But I'm going to post this. And I've blocked pretty much all of anybody that I can that's associated with that kennel. I might have 1 or 2 that I missed because I really don't pay attention to who's on there. It's just whoever comes to mind. And so anyways, I'm going to detach from this. I'm going to post this on the internet, and the internet will do what the internet does. And if it comes down to it and it gets spammed around and it's a warning for everybody and Dan's put on blast, so be it. Don't fuck people. You don't put people in a position like this, and you don't screw with people's family. And I'll tell you, it's a chicken shit move to pull this with me versus going after my buddy. He knows where my buddy works. My buddy's a cop. He knows that it's probably more of an issue to blackmail a cop into doing something like that than it is just a regular person. I'm a fucking nobody. So, of course, he's going to pick on me and try and get me to force his hand because I'm his buddy. Neither of us have any legal obligation to any of it. He's just trying to control a situation that he should have no control over anyways. And had we done our due diligence and got a contract, it would all be in writing, and we'd be able to hold him accountable, and he'd be able to hold us accountable if there was some sort of obligation. But there's not. So, I hope everybody shares this. And yes, as much as I don't want it to be, I am putting Dan on blast because this is shitty business. This is shitty relationships with friends, and this is shitty business. And he deserves the bad press. Deserves every bit of it. I would love to post this whole text string and show how he handles it. And maybe I will. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to engage beyond this. He sends me my paperwork, and I see that posted out today, which I doubt he will. I can't see what time it is because everything's off. It's 3:51, it's 4 o'clock. He's not going to get it out today. So it's got to drag on another day. I got to sit and wait and watch. No. The point of this is do what you're supposed to do. Buyer beware. And at this point, I would love to have zero ties to Dan's kennel. My dogs are wonderful, and I'm not saying shit about them. Alessa is a product of a spunk gang dog, and Dan's dog Bane, which is litter that studded 1 million freaking litters through them, and he's a product of those. Spunk gang is phenomenal dogs. That's who I originally reached out to in 2014 for a dog. And Franco is from Daryl Brown, Casanova, and Bane's littermate. So Bane's the freaking prize here, and these other two high-end kennels. Casanova, from my understanding, has won shows and stuff like that, and the dog that came from the Spunk Gang, I'm sure, did too. I had originally wanted a puppy from that dog in, I think, 14. Maybe that's not the dog. I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was a while. But at the end of the day, I'm done bitching about this. I'm done with this. I hope the internet just goes to work. And I hope that, Dan comes to his senses, that he's burning a bridge with me based on something he has no contract over, especially not for me. I didn't sign anything saying that my buddy is going to provide semen to you. I didn't sign any paperwork that I was going to do that with Franco. I did it because I said I would. And I did it because I wanted to see done right by that dog. I wanted his lineage to live on in a correct way, and I thought Dan at the time was the person to do it. Now, I don't know. It sure isn't worth doing business with him to continue to do that. I think there's better breeders out there. I think that there's more honest people at this point, because everything that I've seen, especially in the last week of dealing with him, is super dishonest, and I never expected to see him do this. But you know what? People will surprise you, and if he's going to do it to me after almost 7 years of business and friendship, he's going to do it to Joe Schmo that's just buying one dog. That's what he did to the guy in Denver. He burned his buddy in Arizona that sounds like he bought, more of the dogs than I've ever owned. I think that he's bought over 10 dogs from him. I don't know. I can't verify any of it, but this is just what I've been told through all these people that have been burned. So, buyer beware, Wasatch Mountain Cane Corso, Dan's a crook, and that's it. He wants something for nothing, and that's it. And I've tried to make this video as clean as possible, but I think you guys can tell how worked up I am towards the end. It's really hard to hide it. So, do right, Dan. That's all I'm saying. Do what's right, and take me out of this. If you want to sue my buddy, go for it. Sue him all you want. I'll go to court and I'll go to bat for him too, because you know as well as I do, there is no obligation to provide anything. But do right by me, and I'll go back and update this that he did right by me. He's gonna call, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll get a fuck you, I don't know. But at the end of the day, he hasn't done right by me, and at this point, I'm cutting ties. And I'm not gonna interact with anything on the internet. I just hope it just gets spammed everywhere and he can just fight it all off. So, thank you guys for your time. I hope you guys all have good business dealings with good breeders, people that are actually doing good things, because we need more of that in the world these days. People are horrible. So just do better, period. Do better business dealings. Be better to each other. I mean, the world isn't a bad place, but there are people like this that sure do make a whole lot of drama that is unnecessary in our lives. And this is the last of it for me. I'm cutting that, and I don't have anything else. I got rid of the toxic people in my life, and I'll tell you what, it's freaking amazing. I don't want any part of this shit. I don't know I don't understand how people live in this chaos constantly. And this is a multiple time a year thing for Dan's Facebook page. Somebody's pissed off. Somebody's going through this. And it just blows my mind how you can live in this. So, have a good week, guys. I'm done. Share the post. Tell your friends. Keep them out of this situation. Because without following this, you might end up in the same situation, and it's not fun. Later, guys.